Right, when you actually announced you were leaving, you did it in a very interesting way where you didn't, like a lot of people assumed, say you'd retired from being an esports, blah, blah, blah. You sort of did leave the door open pretty obviously, like, could be CS return. And I will say, I think it was like days later, I already heard the rumours like, yeah, it's just going to EG. It's just going to be the new EG code. So it's like, whatever. So here's the question, right? When you were coming back to CS, was there still like a vision in mind of like, I still want to be a player? Because obviously when you come back, mate, if anything, you come back to a fucking desolate wasteland. There are no NA teams. It's basically like Team Liquid and EG. That's about it. So like, was there even an option to come back and be a player again if you wanted?
I personally don't really want to play, honestly. It's I've played for so fucking long, and I've always wanted to do the coaching. I've always wanted to potentially be like a general manager and move more into like the business side of things slowly. And it just sort of felt like the right time. And like another reason is like I kind of have some like arm wrist problems as well. So they're not like extreme, but they're enough to where it's like if I take care of it now, it won't be a big issue. So that was sort of like, no, I didn't really want to play. Like, it didn't even really cross my mind. Like, I was the one that reached out to EG because I heard they were looking for a coach after they replaced Zeus. So they were like looking for a new coach, and they would have never asked me if I didn't reach out because like Cirque didn't know I was even interested at all. They just assumed I was a player, and then I messaged Cirque, and he's like, "You're trolling." I'm like, "I'm not trolling." And then once they found out I was serious, it pretty much just happened, like, instantly.
Like, you obviously referenced earlier that to, like, naive fans on forums who don't know any of the people we're talking about, they would assume that, like, you and Stanislaw hate each other and this is some, like, insane blood rivalry, whereas realistically, like, as far as I can tell, you were perfectly fine being teammates years ago and you just replaced each other in some teams. But the thing is, to me, it was the opposite way around, mate. When I heard this move, it was like, this is an obvious fucking move. Like, essentially, without being rude to anyone, you built all the fucking teams that Stanislaw then took over, so why not just partner the two people together? Why not get the person who built the squad and got all the people in the roles, and then get the person who's the current IGL now? You do different division of labour anyway when you're the coach in IGL. Like, this, it almost seems like an obvious one to go with, right? Did you have a similar sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Stanislaw for a long time. I know Cirque and Breezy for even longer, and I've actually talked to Obo before too. Me, who's the only one I didn't really know before. But yeah, it just sort of felt like a good fit. I even know like the manager too. It's just, I know everyone already on the team, and I kind of know, even just like being with them for a week or two, I kind of already see like why they lose and like the problems within the team. So it's just about like how we fix those. But yeah, it was a pretty like obvious move for me at least.
Right, being as when you were last actually in this team as a player when it was NRG was, in my opinion, the moment when Breezy was going absolutely off. That was when he became, no joke, like one of the best players in the world. Sadly, this just shows actually why that NRG team wasn't like as remembered as fondly as you'd think. People forget it. They knew when he came and got to EG and they won the tournament, he was really good. Dude, he was amazing that summer. Even for most of the rest of the year, like, he was legit one of the best players in the world. Like, he was a monster. But obviously, in this last year or so of EG, he's been one of the players that's had his problems. Like, his numbers aren't anywhere. He's not even in the conversation, basically. He's like a big star player. A lot of people, in fact, he's one of the names that people have even speculated maybe would be removed from the team last year, I noticed. So, what would you say about this player? Because as you say, basically, like, I remember him being in the NA scene before he was in your teams, mate, but he was known as either a potential cheater or like he's just a fucking onliner or whatever. So what would you say about this player? Because he clearly was a very good player at one point in time. He's had some issues. Where do you think he's at?
I would say the team has just went through like such a horrible period that even when I first joined, like, it seems like they've lost like all confidence, and you know, the structure's different. You know, they lost Ethan and Tarek. Ethan specifically is like a huge piece to lose, especially when I played. Like, Ethan, people like don't really appreciate how good he was. But he was like one of the only players I ever played with who could like probably IGL better than me, and was also skilled, and was like a good teammate and like put effort in. So it's like, losing someone like that, and then like everything sort of like falling apart, and then like just talking to them, it seems like they've had some like conflicting ideologies, like how to play, and then not everyone agreeing all the time, and then like Tarek was gone, and then it's just sort of like been a constant shit show, it seems like. And even when I looked at their HLTV record before I joined, I was like, holy fuck, like I've never seen it that bad. Even they're like, fuck, like we've never lost this much. So yeah, I forget what your original question was. I rambled a bit, but I hope I answered it.
Right, what about this then? I'll transition to this question. Right, what actual expectations do you place on yourself? Because even though, like, listen, IGL's not too dissimilar from coaches. There's a reason why most coaches in CS just were the IGLs, but it is still a separate role. Like, if you think of the sporting angle, obviously it takes people years to become the best coach. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have about the game. It's a role you have to learn like anything else, right? Transitioning over initially, do you feel like it? Like you've said before, you would have coached Valorant, maybe you would have coached CS in the past. Do you think this is a natural fit for you? Is it a role that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I actually really enjoy it. It's definitely during like the first matches I coached were like the LAN ones at Cologne, but it's definitely it's definitely harder to have impact during the match. Like I only get 30-second pauses, and I can't. It's like you have to pick and choose like what incorrect thing you want to point out or like what thing you want to say to like help the team win. But you definitely have like a lot of like control and like power in terms of like the preparation you do still, and I haven't had too much time with them to like add anything too much or like help with strategies or like whatever their play style is going to be like. But yeah, I think coaches, depending on the type of coach, obviously, but I think coaches do have like a good amount of power in terms of influencing that. It's like I pretty much am an IGL doing what I did before, but I don't have to play. It's pretty much what it is.
Okay. One other thing I had along those lines is, for you, I mean, you've joined during the period where we're getting lands again, but previously, with the exception, I think, of some of the RMRs, where actually some of these did have, like, unlike the CIS RMR, didn't allow the coaches to, like, talk all the time like they can otherwise. In theory, the online era has been the era, like, before they did the coaching rule change back in 2016. Like, in theory, there are teams where, I mean, it's even implied, by the way, in teams like Na'Vi and Gambit, that at the other tournaments, the coach just IGLs, like, he just fucking calls the game, like, or at least gets to talk whenever he wants. So, like, in this current period, if we're online, is that something you actually want to do? Will you essentially just like half IGL the game? Will you try and actually do like a strict approach to what we're going to do online? Do you have any sense of what you're going to do in that regard? Obviously, it's a different dimension to coaching that we can do with the online games.
I would definitely, if I was able to talk at any moment, I would just like be calming for people half the time. Like that would be so OP if I was able to do that. Because like I remember even when I was IGLing and like, you could tell the teams that were better online when their coaches could like communicate for them and shit. And I remember thinking it was super unfair because I was like, well, when they get to land, like this guy's not going to be able to say shit.
Sure.
And then it's like I know half those players don't even communicate basic things. So it's like I know their coach is picking up a ton of the slack and like he's probably calling a little bit too. And that helps a lot. And like it helps some teams more than others, obviously. But yeah, even if you have one player who doesn't communicate basic things very well, it's like you can literally just micro that person by yourself, and then it helps the IGL out a ton. So if I am able to do that, I'll definitely do it. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's like if I help that much, and then on LAN we go there, and I'm not able to like micro for that person, then it kind of like fucks them as well. So.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.